Hey guys, my name is Matsumio, and welcome to an episode of Monday Mailbox. This is a video series where you, the viewer, can submit your gaming-related questions, and then I'll give my humble opinion on them. To get the formalities out of the way real quick, if you'd like to submit your own question that could be featured in an upcoming episode, you can do so by leaving a comment down below, or by sending me a Facebook or Twitter message. The first question that comes from Brandon, and it is, do you think that the Siege player base is making a comeback? It seems that this season has been fairly successful. Yeah, I did see that. Now, unless you've been living under a rock over these last couple of months, you'll probably notice that the Rainbow Six Siege player base has been struggling a bit, and that's putting it mildly. Since March 2020, the game was actually at its peak, at least according to Steam, but then since then, every single month that player base has dropped steadily more and more, to the point where it was in November, where it was 50% less concurrent players than back in March. And so this had a lot of people concerned, like, is this Rainbow Six Siege slowly withering away and people are no longer interested in it? Like, what is going on? But then since then, in December, that player base has skyrocketed by 30%, which is pretty much unheard of with this game and for a lot of games out there. Now, the question is why have we seen this uptick in player count? Is it because of the holiday season? That's a distinct possibility. People have a lot of time on their hands right now. It could be the new legacy game mode. People came back to try out that old content. They wanted to relive the glory days of Rainbow Six Siege. But what I'm hopeful for is that it's just simply because people are enjoying this recent patch, this recent season, and it's actually fixed a lot of the problems that the community has been having with the game for a while now. Now, I can only speak from personal experience, but I have thoroughly enjoyed the start of the season, not only just because it feels like there's a wider variety of viable operators, but also we're not being hindered by the utility meta that we've been having to deal with over the last couple of months. When I came across a deployable shield in the past, it felt like this insurmountable obstacle as long as defense was somewhat prepared. You had to get through all the ADSs and WMIs, and there was no way you were going to be able to take out that player behind it without spending almost every single one of your resources. And so I think the reason why I've been enjoying this season so much is that it doesn't feel as insurmountable anymore. As long as you know what you're doing, you can bring a wider variety of operators, and if you have the right tactics, you can get the job done. Now, that doesn't mean that things are perfect by any stretch of the imagination. Ubisoft still has a lot on their hands that they need to fix and address, but I think the reason why we've maybe seen this larger uptick in the player base is because it's just a good season. It's very refreshing, and the player base has been enjoying that so far. Now, the real question is, though, will they be able to maintain this growth? I think the start of year 6 is really going to be quite telling for the future of Rainbow Six Siege. Are we going to be getting new maps? Are they going to be outlining a lot of great new content? And if it's going to be more of the same, it's hard to say. I think that Ubisoft really needs to bring their A game for year 6, not only with quality of life improvements, but just bringing in more fresh content to get those players back and invested, because while I think the game right now is in a good state, they need to carry that momentum into the next year, but we are going to have to wait and see what they come up with. The next question is, I've been having thoughts about an offensive operator like Smoke mixed with Fuse. They would have the ability to put a device on a wall like Fuse, but it's a gas that does damage and lowers the visibility within the room. Do you think that is plausible? That is an interesting operator idea, but I also have a couple of issues with it. So offense does not have a lot of aerial denial operators. You have Capitao, there's Gridlock, there's a couple of characters that can stop defense from getting where you want them to go, but there's not a ton of that. And so what would be nice about this operator is that if you're trying to plant the diffuser, or you just simply do not want certain sections of the map to be accessible for a short duration, this could be a great way at flushing out or keeping people away from those locations. Now, the issues that we run into, though, is what happens when you're playing on defense and you need to push through this damaging, disorienting cloud to stop someone from planting the diffuser. The best example that I can think of is the downstairs basement on Consulate. Right now, Fuse can be somewhat viable on that objective because he can flush people out, he can kind of deal some damage, and then while that's all going off, you can try to plant the diffuser. But now imagine this character completely floods the entire entire bottom section where defenders are normally hanging out makes it so that that is now no longer accessible because you're going to be dealing damage the entire time. You just waltz in and then plant directly behind the white van. There's nothing that defense can do about that. The other reason why I'm a little hesitant about this idea is that we need to remember that you're going to be able to use this in tandem with other characters. What happens if you use this new operator with Fuse? The reason why you can't use two of Fuse's gadget at the same time is that there would be nothing that defense could do about it. If you place them properly, they run away from one directly into the other, and that's exactly what would probably happen with this operator. They're going to take damage. It just kind of depends on how unlucky they are and how much damage they're going to take. That also sounds like it could cause a lot of problems. And so I'm not opposed to them introducing a character like this because, as I mentioned, it could be quite interesting. Ubisoft would need to walk a fine line. How large is the AoE of the gas? Does it deal a lot of damage? Is the damage component insignificant? Is it mainly just to disorient the defensive team? These are all things that they would have to take into consideration because if they go too far, especially in tandem with someone like Fuse and other operators, this could become a big issue. And so while I like the idea, I think they would need to be very careful. The next one comes from Zyler, and it is, do you think that Battlefield 6 will return the sweet spot sniper mechanic? I find it punishes recon players for trying to get close and play the objective if they have to worry about staying in this strange zone with their weapon. I was not a fan of the sweet spot mechanic. Now, the funny thing about it is that it seems like you disliked it for the reasons that I didn't really have any issues with. I actually like the fact that DICE was trying to incorporate a mechanic to get recon players to not play 5,000 miles away from the objective, like some like to do, just going for those ridiculous headshots, but also not being ultra aggressive. They're supposed to be a class that is meant for long range, and the sweet spot mechanic, at least on paper, seems like it was a good idea to finally accomplish that goal. In reality, though, I just felt like it made that class way too powerful. One of the reasons why I usually avoid hardcore servers in the Battlefield franchise is while they can have their moments, they also can be incredibly frustrating because you're constantly just getting one-shotted by snipers, which gets old. And while the sweet spot mechanic is a bit more limiting than that, you do have to be at that appropriate distance to be able to achieve it, that's essentially what DICE accomplished in Battlefield 1. Now, this could also be due in part because they essentially nerfed all the other weapons in the game while buffing the recon class. And so maybe that's why it leaves a sour taste in my mouth, but that's also another reason why I'm just not really sold on this mechanic. And so all in all, while I recognize that on paper, the sweet spot mechanic sounds like the perfect solution to get recons to play the way that they're supposed to. Not 5 miles away, but also not trying to quick scope people 2 feet away. At the same time, unless they make some adjustments, this is not something that I want in Battlefield 6. I might be the odd one out here, but I much prefer the way they handled things in their other titles. The next question comes from Matthew, and it is, do you feel Ubisoft should stop making new operators and just focus on fixing the already existing ones? I only play casual and I never see any operator past Maverick on offense and Alibi on defense. It just seems hard to justify new ops when some base and old ops are still in such a bad place. Do you really not want any new operators added into the game? We're already down to 1, and I think that's one of the reasons why the game has been so successful over the years, is the fact that they are constantly introducing new mechanics and new characters to kind of spice up the season and bring something refreshing. One thing, and this is where I will agree with you, is that when they made that original announcement that they were going to be dropping the amount of operators that we're going to get each season to 1, I was really hopeful, especially considering that they announced at that same time that Tachanka was going to get reworked. That meant that they were going to be refocusing and using that development time on existing characters. So yes, we were only getting 1 technically new operator, but that extra development time that would have been used on that other operator is now going to be used to rework Blackbeard or Castle. They've been talking about all of these changes to existing operators. I would have thought we would have seen something more, but that just doesn't seem to be the case. Tachanka was ready, or at least he seemed like he was ready 8 months ago, but it took a long time for him to finally come out. And while I know that obviously Unfortunately, current circumstances around the world have made things much more difficult, and that's probably one of the reasons why there has been that slowdown, but I was kind of expecting a bit more. And so I do agree with you to some extent. I think that Ubisoft does need to spend more time on existing operators, like Blackbeard. Ubisoft, what is taking so long? Change that character. He makes no sense in Rainbow Six Siege. I don't know what's taking so long. I think they need to do a better job in that department, but I don't think that just eliminating all new characters entirely is the best way of handling things. But that is just me. But yeah, guys, that has been it for today's episode of Monday Mailbox. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know what you thought about what we discussed in today's video. Do you want to see more existing operator reworks in Rainbow Six Siege? If so, what character would you like? Give me your guys' thoughts down below. As always, if you'd like to submit your own question for an upcoming episode, you can also leave a comment or by sending me a Facebook or Twitter message. But until next time, guys, have a good one and take it easy.